Hello, welcome to the Size Research Corner. I am Katzer, crocheter of life-size Pokemon and self-proclaimed Pokemon size researcher. This is my little corner of the internet where I take the time to explain and oftentimes complain about how we measure Pokemon. Now, because this is our first official episode, I'm just going to take a minute to go over kind of some ground rules of how this is going to work. Okay, so first and foremost, this is for fun. We're here to have fun. I understand that Pokemon are fictional. And at the end of the day, none of this really matters. I get that. So if for you, that's reason enough that there's no point in talking about this, then you're not really going to enjoy this series. But if you are game to just have fun with it, and you're willing to talk about where these inconsistencies have happened and maybe think even a little bit about some of the implications of the Pokemon world or ways to explain it, if you would have fun with that, then we can all have a good time. Second, there are simultaneously so many places that you can look to find answers to these questions, and also no definitive places that you can look for these answers. There are a lot of different places that have this information, and for any given Pokemon, you absolutely will find an official source that conflicts with another official source. At the end of a video, I will share my personal favorite interpretation, the one that I choose to believe as the size of a Pokemon. And if you choose something different, that doesn't make you wrong for having a different preference than me. So, no fighting about that, because there's going to be evidence to support it no matter what you pick. With all that being said, it is now story time. And the main character of this story, Hoppip. Hoppip is a 40-centimeter Pokemon. It evolves into Skiploop, a 60-centimeter Pokemon, who evolves into Jumpluff, an 80-centimeter Pokemon. Clean intervals between the three. Big question at hand is, do Hoppip's leaves count towards its height, or is that 40 centimeters referring to just its body? The year is 2024. Katzer, 2 years younger, has been crocheting life-size Pokemon for about a year and a half now, and I made a video on this very channel 2 years ago about how to interpret the Pokedex. So if you enjoy the premise of this series, could be worth going and watching that video, just saying. But basically, there was a bunch of different concepts that I talked about, and broadly how categorizing Pokemon works and how we tend to measure things based on those categories. And I specifically used the Hoppip line to illustrate a point. Whether or not Hoppip's leaves count towards its height changes how it would relate to Skiploop, because Skiploop has different features. Hoppip having these tall leaves, whereas Skiploop really doesn't have much of a feature on top of its head, would make a very large disparity between those two Pokemon. Whereas if we just measure based on their body size and not include Hoppip's leaves, it makes a much more fluid evolution between the two. Last year, I find out about a certain book. The Pokemon Size Chart Collection. And maybe I should just say right off the bat here in the first episode, this book, I was so excited when I learned that this was a thing, and I was so excited to own it, and then I flipped through it, and I have some criticisms for it. I'm sure we'll get into those as we go on. The relevance to this story, Hoppip caught my eye, because Hoppip is measured the other way. Hoppip is very clearly in this book only 20 centimeters to the body, and the other 20 centimeters made up by its leaves. And I, first of all, didn't like that. But also, it did make me question. Like I said, it had been a year since I had done all of this, and I was like, I checked my work, right? I didn't just make that up and then make a video about it. I checked my work, right? So I went and I opened Pokemon Home, and I looked at it, and it had changed too. It was showing the same thing. It was showing this tiny Hoppip that its body was only 20 centimeters big. It counted the leaves in its height when I compared it to the other Pokemon. And now I really felt like I was taking crazy pills. Because I was so sure, Pokemon Home had been on my side before, right? I didn't make all of this up, right? And thankfully, because I had made a video about it, I had footage. I had screen recorded footage of Pokemon Home from 2024. confirming what I knew. I knew. So, at some point between... When did I check these things? At some point between mid-2024 and late 2025, the Pokemon Company made an update to Pokemon Home to change the size of Hoppip. Maybe just to make me wrong. I will now walk you through what I have checked up to this point. Let's do a timeline. So we're talking about a Pokemon that is from Johto. This is a pretty old Pokemon, second generation ever. Hoppip was released in 1999. So back in those days, there was very little you could do to look at Pokemon like compared to each other in the games. So some of the earliest kind of representations we have of Hoppip come from the anime. Now, if you happen to watch like my introduction video to this series, not a big believer in the anime, not as a size reference, but we're looking at everything here, right? I wanted to see what happened and where it changed and I wanted the whole story. So we're looking at the anime. And when we're looking at the anime, it's a lot of it's going to be comparing Pokemon to each other. And the two Pokemon that are going to be in all of these episodes that we talk about are Pikachu and Togepi. Togepi is a 30 centimeter Pokemon. Pikachu is a 40 centimeter Pokemon. Cool beans. So we're looking at foul weather friends. Right off the bat, Hoppip looking a little small to me. Honestly, they're looking smaller than Pikachu. That much we can say. But we do get several shots throughout the episode of trainers holding Hoppip, similar to how we see Misty hugging her Togepi. And every time that happens, the Hoppips certainly look as big, if not bigger, than Togepi in just their body. But ultimately, like, the number one standout of this whole episode that's like super clear is the Hoppip and the Oddish are the same size. Like, that part, there's no debating. And Oddish is a 50 centimeter Pokemon, but if we can trust my past research, Oddish is a Pokemon where the leads do count towards its height, which means that its body is more like 20 to 30 centimeters. Ultimately, I don't really know what to do with this episode in terms of I don't think I got anything out of it. Moving on to season 4, we have an episode called The Grass Route. Now this one is about a young trainer who is training a Skiploop, and this trainer's family does have a Hoppip. So let's see. Right off the bat, I would say Skiploop looking pretty small. As a reminder, it is a 60 centimeter Pokemon to Pikachu's 40 centimeters. And right at the beginning of the episode, there's actually a lot of like kind of like teasing Skiploop about how small it is, especially compared to Ash's Chikorita, which I'm not going to get into. That's going to be a different episode. Chikorita gets an episode. It continues to be portrayed the same size as basically Pikachu and Togepi. And then finally we get a shot of Hoppip. And this Hoppip never really stands beside Pikachu, Togepi, or even the Skiploop, but we do see it with a Blossom. Blossom is also a 40 centimeter Pokemon. And so it's actually pretty directly clear here. This Hoppip is measured to the top of its leaves, lines up with Blossom pretty well. Its body is absolutely shorter than Blossom. That being said, this same episode did show a Gloom that was also pretty much the same height as like the Skiploop and everything else, and like it Gloom should be 80 centimeters, it should be twice the height. So like I definitely need to give, like, this episode will give a point in the column of Hoppip being measured the small way. But I'm squinting at the whole thing a little bit. Like, there's an asterisk beside that point. Which brings us to season 5, and the final episode that I watched that heavily involved Hoppip. This is called Bulbasaur the Ambassador. It's actually a really cute episode. I liked it a lot. But, oh boy. So, starting off, first screen that I clipped from this episode shows, I mean, there's nothing from the Hoppip line in here, but it does show an Oddish looking absolutely massive and bigger than the Gloom that it evolves into. Just like, let the confusion of that set the tone for this episode. Because right after that, we get into a beautiful group shot. Bunch of different grass-type Pokemon. There's a lot to take in here. First of all, the Oddish that is still massive beside the gloom. But then if you look on the other side, we do have our Hoppip line to observe. And so right away you can see like Hoppip standing beside a Jumpluff. They're very similar body sizes, which is what you would see if we are not measuring Hoppip's leaves and we are measuring Skiploop's puff. So, but this is what I would expect to see personally. But then you got these like towering Skiploop in the back, like bigger than the Jumpluff entirely. Like, I don't know, quick change of camera angle, and all of a sudden the Jumpluff are way bigger than the Hoppip, and now it seems like we have flipped to the point where Hoppip are being measured with their leaves. Then we get another big group shot where, again, we still see Hoppip looking, his body half the size of Jumpluff's body, but we've still got Skiploop just towering over everything in the back. So, and then, you know, for good measure, we've also got Gloom being shorter than Blossom again. Then in one of our final clips of the show, we see they're back to the original where Hoppip is just as large in body as Jumpluff. And again, for some reason, they're all the same size as an Oddish. Like, that came back. We can debate Hoppip all you want and how it's measured, but like straight up that Jumpluff is smaller than that Oddish. So I really don't think I can pull a point in either direction out of that. So moving on. The first instance that I found of a 3D modeled Hoppip in a game was from Poke Park Wii in 2009. And this one's nice and straightforward. You can stand right beside it as a Pikachu. You are clearly very similar size to its body. This is 100% easy peasy. Hoppip is the larger version in Poke Park. Fast forward to 2018, that is when my size collection book was published. So as of 2018, somebody thought that it was the small version of Hoppip. Then in 2021, we got a collection of shorts released on the official Pokemon YouTube channel, Pokemon Evolutions. And there is an episode of Pokemon Evolutions where it's very brief. It's just like a moment in time, but we do see both a Hoppip and a Skiploop. They're very similar, right? Comparative body sizes. So this is strongly in favor of Hoppip's leaves not counting. And then 2022 is the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, Scarlet and Violet, like, this is my go-to for Pokemon size comparisons. I use it all the time. We have this beautiful open world, overworld, 3D modeled Pokemon. You can line them up in a picnic. Chef's kiss. I have brought my perfectly average Hoppip and my perfectly average Jumpluff to a picnic. Line them up. Very nice. Clearly, that Hoppip's body is very similar to that Jumpluff's body. We are talking larger, no leaves counting Hoppip in Scarlet Violet. After that, in 2024, we got another Pokemon short video, this time in the Poketoon series. And this involves a young girl who's staying in the Safari Zone, and Hoppip play a rather significant part in that story, the Hoppip line. And in this one, again, you know what? I think it's pretty clear that we are looking at small Hoppip in this. I can't argue it. Looks pretty consistently like small Hoppip. Then later, 2004, of course, is when I originally checked Pokemon Home. Moving into 2025, this is when I checked Pokemon Home again, and it had changed. I'm putting a marker in both sides for this, actually. And then my final little reference, this is kind of a silly fun one, was actually a card that came out in TCG Pocket. And it depicts Hoppip carrying a raspberry. And what I don't think everybody knows is that we do have official sizes for berries as well. So the raspberry is a 12 centimeter berry. And given that, I would say that, you know, the art on this card is definitely depicting our smaller Hoppip, right? That 12 centimeters looks like about half its body. So that would give you about a 20 centimeter body and then 20 centimeter of leaves to make up your 40 centimeters. So yeah, so that's everything that I went through in preparation for this moment for now. These are all the things I looked at. And the chart is in favor of small Hoppip. However, first off, I think it's worth acknowledging that, like, that was pretty close. This is a close race here. So given, like, even just a few more pieces of data, like if I were able to get the Pokedex comparison of size from Pokemon Ruby Sapphire or Pokemon Diamond Pearl, already it could tip the scale. But in addition to that, well, I think any of these references are perfectly valid to use. In my personal opinion, not all references are made equal, right? Like, you know what? I was giving a lot of side eye to quite a few of the tickies on the smaller size, right? Like, I already told you there was an asterisk beside that anime episode. I think in the scope of like Pokemon fans, honestly, not that many of us even know that there's a Berry Dex. So the odds of this particular illustrator knowing that there was a Berry Dex is like flimsy, I think, to compare the size to like a berry as our reference. That one's, also iffy. I also alluded to, kind of the beef that I have with my size collection chart book. And the same thing kind of applies, like as brilliant as these tools are, things like the size collection and things like Pokemon Home that let you directly compare, that's their whole point of existing. I really want to give some like strong weight to those because this is their point. But at the same time, both of these tools do have certain things that I just usually it's surrounding like the position that the Pokemon in, or kind of like the way that they're standing up to be measured, for example, it just makes me feel like not a lot of effort went into making these tools sometimes. Like sometimes it's just stock art slapped against a backdrop and like it's not always super helpful. But ultimately, to me, the number one kind of like top tier reference source is always going to be any mainline open world Pokemon games, somewhere where we have like an immersive 3D modeled world that's like interactive and you go into it. Like these are going to be, to me, the best representations of Pokemon. So in this case, personally, I put the most emphasis on to Scarlet and Violet. So that's going to be my takeaway. I will continue to believe that Hoppip has a 40 centimeter body. And yeah, you know what? There's always going to be a little bit of confirmation bias at play here when I'm coming into it, basically giving permission to pick and choose the references you like best. So easy to confirmation bias. But like, there's no consequences, so like confirm your biases all you want. Ultimately, I just want to go on believing whatever it is that makes like my crocheted Hoppip still accurate. I would really like to get those last few pieces of information that I know I can look for. I think Hoppip's in Pokepark 2. Like I said, I know I can find that Pokedex data in Gen 3 and Gen 4 if I just like look a little deeper. And you know what? If you have any other places where you know you've seen a Hoppip or a Jumpluff or a Skiploop referenced against any other like size metric, like another Pokemon or a trainer, tell me about it. Drop those in the comments. I want to factor in all the information. That's what we're here to do. And you better believe that I'm keeping my eye on Pokemon Home. Honestly, I just find it so fascinating in general. Like just the concept that somebody went in and changed that data. Like they updated it. A Hoppip. Like what, maybe there was some memo that went out internally at Pokemon that was like, guys, get your stuff together about this Hoppip. What are you doing? Will we see Hoppip in the next mainline Pokemon game? How big will it be there? Who knows? But hey, if you had fun here today, make sure you subscribe so that you get to see future episodes. They'll be coming out every other week. And in the meantime, I will be doing some live streams doing this research, going in and getting my references in like Pokemon Scarlet Violet. If it's relevant, we'll be in Pokemon ZA, we'll be in Pokemon Legend Arceus. Arceus is my very favorite game for references. Our next episode is going to be either on the Beldum line or the Magnemite line. You want to know what I have to say about those lines of Pokemon, don't you? Hope to see you there.